Good morning, everyone. Welcome to News Center's Political Brew here once again on Sunday morning with John Richardson and Phil Harriman. And no football jerseys this week. That's now in the past. The countdown clock to next February is already on.
Did you see the cartoon of the Patriots needing another plane because they got to put another Super Bowl on the wing?
And you wonder why everybody hates them.
I know.
Speaking of money, Governor Janet Mills has presented her first two-year budget. It came out on Friday in broad strokes. It fully funds Medicaid expansion, creates a Medicaid reserve account with some contingency funding, invests an additional $126 million in K through 12 education, building toward universal pre-K, and a $40,000 minimum teacher salary across the state. Provides money to create a new pre-release facility in Washington County to take the place of the Down East Correctional Center, and other things as well. Phil, in general, what's your first take on this budget?
Yeah, the big picture on the box that the governor has presented to the legislature is in keeping with her campaign. So promises made, proposals introduced. The hard part is next, as John and I know from our time in the legislature. Legislators have great ideas too that they want to see in that budget that aren't in there, and of course it's got to be balanced. So this is the beginning of what will be a very interesting process, and thanks to the former administration, there's money in the bank for some of these things to be funded.
Tomorrow night, the governor is giving a budget address. We'll know more details, but John, what's your take?
Well, her campaign promises now match the budget, and I think that's very good. There can be a healthy debate about these issues and priorities, but I think she's put her money right where it needs to be, and that is in health care as a basic right. She's saying we all deserve health care, and she's putting the money in to make sure we leverage the $500 million the federal government will provide. In addition, we've had to pay, property taxes have paid for the schools in the last 8 years, and she's saying no more. Let's have the state pay more of that and increase general purpose aid to education. I think a great first start.
On Thursday, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked a restrictive abortion law in Louisiana on a 5-4 vote. Not the 5-4 you might expect, because Chief Justice John Roberts joined liberals in voting to block the implementation. Opponents of the law say it would have closed most of the state's abortion clinics. Brett Kavanaugh, the newest justice, voted to allow the law to take effect. A lot of Susan Collins detractors are saying, I told you so, that Susan Collins was wrong when she argued that Kavanaugh would not restrict abortion rights. John, is that a fair criticism?
It is. I mean, I think Susan Collins is the only one surprised by the fact that Brett Kavanaugh voted this way. She was convinced he wouldn't. She said she had conversations with him that convinced her that he would protect what was quote, well-settled law, and unfortunately he did exactly what he said he'd do in the confirmation hearings, and that is to curb or restrict down the abortion rights. Susan Collins owns this, and you know, as we've all said to her before, you know, you should have seen this coming.
Phil?
You know, the message out of the Supreme Court is that it was struck down, and that at the end of the day preserves whatever laws in Louisiana that were being challenged. And we're going to see these issues from time to time. Chief Justice Roberts was the one who let Obamacare become the law of the land. We're going to see these issues from time to time. I think you have to give Kavanaugh and other justices a time to show over, you know, a number of court cases where their philosophies are, not judgment on one vote.
But will this have a political cost for Susan Collins?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. It could. It's certainly a talking point for her challenger, and if there are other issues that put her on the defensive, that'll be another one that she'll have to fend off.
Back to the State House. For years, government and private groups have talked about how Maine needs a stronger long-term economy, but there's never really been a long-term economic plan. Now lawmakers have a bill before them talking about creating one. John, you were the Commissioner of Economic Development under Governor John Baldacci. It seems like a logical thing to try to do.
It is, unfortunately, and the state statute says the Department of Economic and Community Development will go ahead and draft a statewide economic development plan, but it's fractured and has been fractured for a long time. State Planning Office had their own plan, the Maine Development Foundation had their plan, the Department of Economic Development would have theirs. At times when it was funded for them to have a chance to do that, we would take the science and technology side of it, and we would use our monies to go ahead and fund a program and showing what was going on there. But this is, I think, a chance for Janet to pull these groups together and have one economic development plan as opposed to competing plans about where to go and how to move forward. Until you're all rowing in the same direction, you're not going to have a really comprehensive economic plan for the state.
Anybody who knows Pete Vigue, who's the chairman of the board at Chimbro Corporation up in Pittsfield, Maine, he has been a champion of having a statewide economic strategy, and if this administration is finally going to listen to people like Pete Biggie and others who have this long-term vision, this is long overdue and good for her for running with it.
One problem, though, is that where it fails, where economic development plans fail in the country, is when the governor's office tries to run it. If they allow the professionals to go ahead and do it, it tends to do well. When they try to control it from the governor's office, it does very poorly.
We'll see what happens. We've got a lot more to talk about this morning on Political Brew. We'll do that in the next hour. News Center's back after this.